Most recruitment ads suck, but to be fair, that's only because most ads of any kind suck, so why should recruitment ads be any different?
The challenge of recruitment advertising is the same as the challenge for brand advertising. You can't just tell me something about your company and expect me to believe it. You have to demonstrate it.
If you have 100,000 people listening to the radio this week and you run a recruiting ad, of that 100,000 people, about 20 might be interested in coming to work for you, which means you better bloody well think hard about what you're saying to the other 99,980 people, because they're listening too.
I will absolutely pay a signing bonus. I will pay it to the person who referred them in, who's been my loyal employee.
Be awesome, and awesome people will want in.
If you do this correctly, every ad is a recruiting ad.
Recruiting, hiring, staffing up. Whatever you call it, finding great people is one of the hardest and most important parts of running a business. And yet, most recruitment ads are so bad that they have trouble convincing a dog to chase a bone. On today's episode of Advertising in America, we're breaking down why recruitment ads suck and, more importantly, how to make them not suck. Mick, what do you say?
Most recruitment ads suck, but to be fair, that's only because most ads of any kind suck, so why should recruitment ads be any different? But I'll give you a few clues as to why yours suck and how to make them better. First, let's define our terms. When I say a recruiting ad, I mean an ad that everyone sees, not the ones on a recruiting website. That's a whole different kind of suck. We'll get to those later. I mean a recruiting ad that's on the radio, on TV, or online that's not in a job search environment. That kind of recruiting ad. The first thing you have to keep in mind when writing a recruiting ad is most of the people who are exposed to it are not going to come to work for you. Nearly everyone. If you have 100,000 people listening to the radio this week and you run a recruiting ad, of that 100,000 people, about 20 might be interested in coming to work for you, which means you better bloody well think hard about what you're saying to the other 99,980 people, because they're listening too and they're learning about you and they're judging you. My brother Chris has a former client who put a recruiting ad on Facebook and linked it to his personal Facebook page. It was a recruiting ad for a sales position at his company, and it was amazing. Here he is talking to everyone in his community about what he's looking for in a salesperson. We're looking for closers. We want people who could sell ice cream to Alaskans, not afraid to upsell. Performance is everything. And I'm reading this and I'm thinking, ice cream to, what the fuck, dude? What he's actually saying is, I train my sales staff to sell people stuff they don't actually need. That's what the expression means. We put making money ahead of helping people, and you're saying that to everyone, for reals. This guy did that. Now, at the Wizard of Ads, when we write an ad campaign for our clients, we always create a recruitment problem, and that's because our clients grow and grow quickly. If you don't have a staff shortage now, you will about a year after hiring us, because you'll have more work than your current staff can handle. So we're looking at how to solve that problem before it's even a problem, because we've seen this movie before. And the way we do it is we keep in mind that potential hires are watching TV and listening to the radio too, watching what you say and what you stand for. And when we do it right, every ad is a recruiting ad. Be the company people want to work for. Reveal something about yourself. Demonstrating that you're a good company to buy from probably means you're a good company to work for. If you can become the leading brand in your category, in your community, don't be surprised when others want to join the winning team. If you do this correctly, every ad is a recruiting ad.
So, Mick, what you're saying is that every ad's a recruitment ad, even when it's not.
As long as it doesn't suck.
That's some big picture thinking. I'm in. But now, let's zoom in a little. Chris, what's your take?
I agree with Mick. I'll deny it if you ever call me on it, but he is right. When you make a company look enticing to a customer, you also make it look enticing to a certain kind of employee. There are tons of people who would love to work for Apple or Mercedes or Disney World or Ben & Jerry's. And it's not because they do killer recruitment advertising. They think that brand looks fun, or that brand looks like they get me. And so that's the place they aim for. The challenge of recruitment advertising is the same as the challenge for brand advertising. You can't just tell me something about your company and expect me to believe it. You have to demonstrate it. The same as a plumbing company can't just say, we're the ones you can trust. You can't just say to people, this is a really good place to work. Just because you say it doesn't mean I believe you. Because when people say things about what they're like, they lie. In recruiting ads, we know what those euphemisms are. Looking for a self-starter means you'll have lousy coaching and supervision, and we're going to just expect you to figure it out on your own. Competitive salary means we don't know how much to offer, so we're going to see how little we can get you for. A fast-paced environment means the workload's too heavy and management barely has control over how things operate. We work hard and we play hard means we work hard. Then people get plastered at the end of the week on their own dime just so they can put up with it. Just like consumer branding messages, don't tell me, show me. When you see an Apple ad or an Apple product, there is a certain personality of designer or developer who thinks, that's my aesthetic. I would fit in perfectly on that team. The key is that I don't see you pulling the strings. The recruitment aspect of that advertising has to be invisible. You don't run an ad for an iPhone and then say, and if you think like we do, we're also hiring like-minded people to join our team. If you do that, your ad is trying to do two things, and your ads should do one thing. If you're trying to sell me your products or services and you're also hiring, I literally don't know if you're buying or selling. If I'm clever enough to figure out on my own that you must be an awesome place to work, now we're talking Cordoba. Google is literally beating people back with a stick. When people say literally, they almost always mean figuratively. In this case, there may literally be a stick involved. There are interviews and written tests and personality screening and trips to the campuses, sample assignments, and very few people make it through the gauntlet to get hired. But thousands or maybe tens of thousands of people apply every year because what they know about the brand makes them want to work there. They never put a help wanted sign in the store window. Be awesome, and awesome people will want in. Be mediocre, and mediocre people will make a half-hearted effort to beat down your door or, jiggle the handle a little and then probably give up. If you do post a recruiting ad, tell me a story. Help me draw my own conclusions about what your brand stands for and why that is something I want to be part of. Tell me things that demonstrate and let me conclude that you are an interesting place to work, that it's an opportunity to learn and grow, that I'm a good personality fit for the team I'm going to be a part of. But no recruiting ad will make me think that if those things aren't true.
Now that's a lot to chew on. Recruitment ads aren't just about finding people. They're about finding the right people. And you can only get a great fit when you fill the gaps too. And as we've heard, that takes more than just throwing out cliché, self-starter, and fast-paced environment. Let's dig deeper into what makes a recruitment ad not just functional, but memorable after the break.
So this is normally when Ryan throws to himself, kind of a commercial within a show about commercials. And that's fine, we could let him do that. But really what you want to hear is me yelling at you. That's the reason you tune into the show. Sure, the conversations are fun and the insights are thought-provoking, but what you really want is cursing, and that's where I come in. I mean, I don't want to get all shit or get off the pot on you, but at the moment, Ryan's doing this whole, I'll give you 45 minutes of my time to help you narrow down your challenges and find a solution thing. You think that asshole will give me 45 minutes to shoot the shit, but here's what he does. This maniac will go over everything, your sales process, your offers, your loyalty club, and yes, your marketing. And then you don't have to do a fucking thing. You can take all that insight and roll. If you like what you hear and want a deeper dive away, my friend. Ryan ends up not working with about 90% of the people he meets. But the ones he does end up working with, they start here. So think about that. He's got a whole web thingy where you can book an appointment. It's at wizardofads.services. Stupid address? You want to believe it. And I'd say that to his face. wizardofads.services. And now, let's get back to the stuff I really want to curse about. Shit!
There's a lot to unpack here on this episode, and where I'd like to start is with something that is very often in our blind spot, and that's around who is the actual competition for our employees, right? Or our potential employees, or the applicants that are coming in. There's no question that you're up against all of the plumbers who are looking for plumbers in the market that you're in, but you're also up against all of the competition out there of jobs that are looking for people who are willing to pay the same amount of money or more to do an easier job. So we start to think about how we stand out in the crowd and how big this crowd actually is.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily just an easier job too, but how many people are wondering whether the career they're in is the career for them, and is there something else that I could get involved in? And you're right. If your target audience is you are only looking for veterinary nurses, then that's a very small target to go after. And wherever you advertise now, if you advertise in mass media, boy, there's a lot of people that you're not advertising to in order to get the ones that you're trying to reach.
Right.
But if you present your company or think of the opportunities that you're offering in terms of what kind of person with what kind of skills would I like in this job, and I can teach them the specifics of it, and you think of it more broadly that way, now you can advertise in a bunch of other places in more mass media.
Right.
And you can concentrate on hiring the right kind of person, not the right kind of existing resume. And I think that opens you up. And we've had some clients where we've done advertising, either directly recruitment-based advertising or this double duty advertising that Mick talked about, who deliberately look out of field for their new hires, because it's like, I could teach you how to run the J2000 machine, and I can, what I want is somebody who's got an awesome work ethic, or who really likes talking to people, or, these sorts of things. And when you can open it up like that, you can advertise bigger, which means you can advertise to a larger target. You've got a much larger potential pool of applicants.
Right.
And frankly, it says better things about your company too, because you talk about beliefs, and you talk about the tone of the organization when you're talking to people outside of the specifics of, I need a guy who knows how to use this wrench.
When we speak to our clients, if we're creating a recruiting ad, and by this I mean a recruiting ad that's specifically targeting people and is very, very specific about that. One of the questions we ask our client is, are you looking for an experienced person who already has this job, or are you looking for people just in general, and you're going to train them to do the thing you want to do? It seems like a little thing, but it's actually a massively huge thing. And that's because if you're looking for somebody with experience, kind of by definition, you're talking to somebody who already has a job. They already, which means they're kind of working for your competitor now.
Yeah.
And you're now asking them to leave their job and come and work for you.
Right.
Well, you can't get them to do that by simply saying, we are hiring, let's say you're an HVAC company and you're hiring HVAC techs. Simply saying we are an HVAC company and we're hiring HVAC techs is not enough to make someone say, I'm going to quit my job and start to come to you. That's the recruitment equivalent of here's who we are and here's what we sell. Exactly. Doesn't move the needle.
Right.
So you have to be really, really specific in your messaging, because you have to be talking to either a disgruntled worker, or you have to somehow entice them away from their existing job. And that's not an easy thing. That's actually kind of a big deal.
Right.
So you have to really be giving them something that's going to tremendously change them.
And this is really no different than my theory of the brand is your culture and your culture is your brand, because ultimately people are going to say, oh, I want to work for that company. And then you've got your share of the unicorns. And if you don't have that, what you're doing is exactly that. You're answering questions that no one's asking, or you're saying, hey, I need a customer to buy my air conditioning stuff, and you're a customer, and I sell air conditioners, so why not come buy my stuff? Right? The buy my stuff in this case is, I'll pay you, some sort of exchange to be here, and try not to be too much of a pull or
Yeah, but again, the question comes, like consumer advertising, the question comes down to, okay, well, I got a job.
Right.
Or, as you said, 2 other people are also saying they're hiring, so why you?
So think of that candidate as a consumer. It's the consumer of your job, right? And your job is going to be represented by your brand, and ultimately the brand is a culmination of what your people feel are true to your business, and they're the ones who are going to give the buying experience, and the buying experience and employee experience make up the brand. So this self-referential full circle makes it so important for people to realize that, if you want the best, if you want to accelerate growth, if you want to find unicorns, you got to do that with the best brand, because unicorns don't work for losers.
You have to give them something worth leaving their job for and breaking in a new boss. People don't like
rough.
to break in a new boss. It's no fun. So you can't think that you're going to accomplish that just by simply saying, oh, I'm hiring. And what are you paying? Pretty much the same as everybody else.
Competitive salary.
Yeah, sure. Let me guess. Is it basically what I'm making now? Yeah.
Right. So the trick here is, in a lot of the ads that you've written, where every recruitment ad is an ad and every ad is a recruitment ad, that we can put that on mass media, and ultimately the mass is hearing it and 99% aren't going to be employees of yours, but the people who are hearing are saying, I would want an employee like that in my house.
Absolutely. If you're running a recruiting ad that regular consumers are going to hear, you have to understand, mathematically, 99% of the people listening are not coming to work for you. They're just listening to how you recruit. So you have to be bearing the consumer's reaction to your recruiting ad in mind as much or more than the candidate, even though that's what you're trying to do, because they're listening. And if you say, for example, I'm looking for a salesperson who's going to jam a sale down their throat that they don't want, you're turning people off. And that's most of the people listening.
That is most of what your ad is accomplishing, as opposed to the one small thing that you originated.
And when done elegantly, as you have for a number of our clients, what we see is that you're not just speaking to John, who's getting a little bit sick of Jerry, right?
Well,
the boss.
You have to think in the mindset of your recruit, of your candidate, and you raise a really interesting point. People don't leave companies; they don't quit companies. Nobody says, I don't like IBM, I'm quitting. What they say is, I don't like Jerry, my boss. I'm sick of Jerry and his shit. Fuck Jerry, fuck IBM,
He's keeping
I'm
me
leaving.
from turning into what I see for myself.
That's it. Now, they leave IBM, but they didn't quit IBM, they quit Jerry.
Yeah.
So you need to, if you want a person who has a job now, you have to somehow convince them that the things they don't like about their job now are not going to haunt them when they come to you, because they're not going to bother switching from that company to your company if there's any possibility that the thing that they don't like about their current job, they're not going to like with you.
Well, and two things come from that. One is that not only is John mad at Jerry, but John's wife is sick of John talking about Jerry.
Yes.
Right? And John's wife is listening to this ad.
Absolutely, she is.
And brother and mother and sister and next door neighbor and everyone else that John's complaining about. And then one day Jerry's going to just go one step too far, and the writing's already on the wall for your brand. You become the know, like, trust brand of choice.
Are you on the short list for when they finally get sick and tired of Jerry?
Yes.
So this leads us to the next component of this, which is that intrusive versus passive media channels. If I'm on a passive media channel like Indeed, I'm sitting there and I'm going, we exist. You may find us in the 8,000 different job ads that are for that particular category or keyword. And you may find us, or you may not. And if you do, you may get past the frontline sentence, the headline, and get in to actually read our copy. One, that copy has to be friggin' awesome, right? Stop talking about your business. Start talking about the person that John wants to be and stand for and represent and feel good about, so that you get them. Now, the problem with passive is that you're also going to get all of the people that Jerry fired because they didn't even come close to cutting the mustard, and now you're getting the classic word in the home service space is retreads. I'm not a big fan of that, but there is an awful lot of people who have the Dunn-Kruger effect, where they deeply believe that their value is disproportionate to their actual skill set. And that has them thinking that they deserve an awful lot more than what they actually deserve, because they, frankly, very rarely it's because of their fault. It's because.
But again, that's on you to weed those people out. That's another one of these sort of educate the consumer things that we covered in that episode too, which is, it's not the advertising's job to get people who are actually duds to think they're probably onto me as a dud, so I'm not going to bother, and to just get the guys who are actually really sharp to apply.
Right. Well, we will get the targeting through copy, but we can also do that through those mass media channels now, the intrusive media,
right,
that goes out to the greater population.
Mm-hmm. Well, which is why so often we discuss with our clients the potential angle of not looking for an experienced worker, and say, can you take someone with no experience, train them your way, not have to unlearn them a bunch of bad habits that they've gotten into, so that the only way they do things is your way. Right. Is it harder? Yes. Does it take longer? Yes, it does. But you avoid the challenge that you get when you're specifically targeting experienced people. You have two possible situations. Either one, you've got a person who does this for a living and has no job, which makes us ask the question, why? Or you have a disgruntled employee. And now your job is to make that person gruntled again. Mm-hmm. And gruntling an employee is not an easy task to achieve.
Right.
So you need to realize that there's a tremendous downside when you say, oh, I definitely want an experienced person. It's like, okay, but there's a huge amount of baggage that comes with that.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that the curtains need to match the drapes. In this situation, we need to make sure that when we actually get them inside, that they go, oh, this is exactly the way we imagined it being.
Well, and maybe that training is where you do that, right? Again, the advertising's job is to make people go, that sounds like a place I want to work. That'll be good people who want to go there, and that'll be questionable people who want to go there. If you do, what Mick was talking about, where you say, okay, then there's going to be a training thing where we bring you around to our systems. If those people struggle with that, it's like, well, I don't know, the way I've always done it is, okay, well, you know what? You're starting to learn something about this person. Maybe this is your way of sorting.
Right.
And so if you build that in there, that's how you can separate the wheat from the chaff.
We do this with our clients' customers as it is, right? We have customers who are existing customers. They are in a club membership. They're engaged. They're doing the thing. They're interacting in that meaningful way. Then there's the disengaged or the dissenting customers, the ones that are disengaged and not connecting anymore, the quiet quitters, the less motivated, the people who are showing at a lower productivity, and those are showing up traditionally in KPIs. And then there's the dead list or the orphan list, the dead list of customers that you can't get a hold of. They're no longer there. They're disengaged. They're gone, right? And we're talking about really finding those disengaged but not looking employees are the best possible employees. The disengaged, not looking, are the ones that don't need a job.
Right, but if they're happy at their job and they like their boss and everything's groovy, boy,
you got to work hard to shake them up.
You've got a challenge in front
Good
of you
luck.
to get that.
And frankly, it's not even that. If it's just they think this is the average and they think it's going to be no better or worse with you, then people will stick with a sure thing way longer, even if they have an inkling that, I wonder if another place would be nicer, but man, I'm not going to throw in the towel on this, is sacrifice what I have on the off chance. There's got to be it's got to look like an obvious improvement.
I think people discount the difficulty with which someone leaves a job. I had a client, no longer my client, I'm happy to say, in the state of Virginia, and they believed, this person truly believed in his heart that there was no loyalty in his community and that people would only work for home services companies for 18 months maximum. And that's because nobody stayed at his company for more than 18 months. And he was constantly in a state of recruiting because he had this tremendously enormous attrition problem. And it never occurred to him that the problem might be him.
Be internal.
Remember when I said people leave bosses? Well, he was the boss, and it never crossed his mind that people were joining his company, and just
After
over
18
a year,
months, they were
people
figuring
like,
it out.
I'm going to go somewhere else, and he just thought, well, the grass is always greener. That's the problem in this town. The grass is always greener. By the way, this is a military town, like the most loyal patriotic, loyal people literally on the planet. And he just think they just try things, and then if the grass is greener, they try something else. Well, you know what? Training, breaking in a new boss, getting a new truck,
no one wants to do that.
A new system, paperwork and all that. Nobody wants to do that.
When you start at a new place, you're really hoping this is the one.
That's right.
This guy seems like he could be the one. Fingers crossed, honey. I think we found the right one this time.
They're really not saying to their wife, let's try this out for a year and see if I like it, and if not, I'll try somewhere else. Nobody likes doing that. If you have a recruitment, if you have an attrition problem, if people are not staying with you, look in the freaking mirror. This is on you.
And this is a nod to just take a second and realize that's not just candidates, that's customers. Customers don't want to change companies of HVAC or plumbing or insurance or lawyers or anything else.
Or cola or beer.
Or cola or beer.
They know where to get their brand.
Yes.
The devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And the reality of it is that there may not be a perfect situation there for them, but it's good enough. And what we're selling is in those situations is sometimes just something a little bit better than what they have right now. And sometimes that's going to be more effective than trying to sell them on this super aspirational, super transformative, thriving dream, because you're not meeting where they're at.
Well, and that's why this idea of having you figure it out is more powerful. Because, to Mick's point and to your point just then, you have to say that incredible thing now. You have to say something that is so outrageous that I might give up what I have. Whereas if I watch your consumer ads for long enough that I think, man, that company's really got it figured out. I wonder if they're hiring. I wonder if it's my idea. If I'm starting to think I've figured something out, and they don't seem to be putting any recruitment out about it, I wonder if I gave them a call. Like, I think I'm the smart one here. Then I'm the one who said that they're this much better. You didn't try to convince me of that with perhaps limited actual evidence. You didn't quote a price that's a third higher than the salary I'm making. You didn't tell me I'm going to get more days off. You did. If you don't say that stuff, then you don't look substantially better. If I figure it out, I may come to that conclusion on my own, and then I'll proceed that way.
Well, I think it's incumbent of us to say that it is no longer an option for growing companies to advertise periodically as they need people and do this constant caterpillaring effect
if you're growing,
catching people.
You always need new people.
Yeah.
Well, and we don't know when those good people are going to show up, right? It might be Christmas Day when they finally get a day off and they're just sitting there going, man, sick of this nonsense. And they're flicking through and they're going, boom. But now if you were known, liked, and trusted by that same guy, girl.
Yeah, when you're scrolling through and it's like, who of these people do I feel? Oh, I've heard of this company.
I feel good about these guys. It's recruitment, not just for the consumer centric, but for the candidate centric as well. And we have to be paying attention to that. My ads are up 365 days a year for recruits on my websites. I'm always making sure that we're available and looking for and paying attention to the opportunity for unicorns.
Right.
So if you're not on the hunt for the unicorn, for the people, and a unicorn's not about the superstar, the unicorn's about the person who is the absolute best fit for you, be it that they are congruent with your value structure, but equally as much that they fill a gap that you currently have lacking. Right.
Well, and here's a little bit of practical advice. I talked about a former client of mine who was clueless as to what the problem was with the attrition problem at his company. And of course, by definition, that means sometimes the boss just doesn't know what the problem is. But I'm going to give you a little shortcut to find out if you're that guy. Mm-hmm. The best recruitment strategy that you have at your company is your employees. Are they bringing people to your company to work? Are they bringing their friends? Are they bringing their buddies? Are they bringing colleagues? People it doesn't matter what business you're in. You know other people. If
they
in that
left
business.
A place, are they reaching out to those guys saying, "Hey, you should come as well"?
You should come as well.
Yeah.
If they're doing that, that means you are bringing something to the table, and they're willing to put themselves out. If you hire a person and he brings nobody, that's not his problem. That's your problem. Mm-hmm. Never ask your employee, why are you not recommending your brother who also does this for a living to come here? He would have recommended to his brother who does the same thing if he was happy with the decision he's made. He just doesn't want to bring his brother into the shit show that he found himself in.
Right.
So that's a good way of knowing. If your employees are constantly bringing their friends, you're doing it right. If it never happens, look in the mirror. This problem is yours. You can fix it, but the first step is to acknowledge that you have a problem. You might want to talk to Ryan about that. He can help you with it.
Well, one of the things that I commonly see are these recruitment bonuses of $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to get recruited into the business. That sends such a terrible message to absolutely everyone that I'm astounded that it's still employed today. The type of person
that you have to bribe
attract,
people to come and work for you.
Right? Yeah. When we talk about transactional and relational customers are made up of the same thing that Soylent Green crackers are made out of, friggin' people, right? So let's all agree that the same thing is true with our candidates. If they're coming in transactionally, they're leaving just as transactionally. You've got them as long as you have not paid them their last check.
Well, and the other nice
bonus.
parallel to how we treat loyal customers versus new customers, right? When you give these fantastic signing bonuses to new customers, and it's like, I've been a customer of yours for 5 years, and you're giving that guy a better rate because he's new. Right. How about me, the guy who's stuck with you?
That's
and
right.
so if you offer a signing bonus, it's like, dude, I've been an employee here for 3 years. I'm your best guy, and whatever, and you're ignoring me to take a chance on new guy. Like,
Frankly,
wait a minute.
If the signing bonus is big enough, I will switch to the other company for 18 months just to take the money. But I'm not the guy you want.
Right. Well, and look, I will absolutely pay a signing bonus. I will pay it to the person who referred them in, who's been my loyal. I'm not paying it to the guy who's coming in. I'll pay him when he refers somebody in, and they stick.
And they're also a good person. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So the signing bonus is valid. You've just paid the wrong person.
Right.
Right.
That's a really good point.
Right.
Have it reinforce the relationship that's most important to you, which is keeping good people.
That's it. This is the difference between dopamine and oxytocin, right? If I say, I'll give you $20,000 if you do a thing, dopamine.
Yeah.
Right. But if I say, look, I'm going to pay you $100 for the next, every paycheck for the next 2 years for every person that you've brought in and sticks around for that period of time. And if you bring in 10 people, that's $1,000 people, $1,000 a month,
a week,
right? Or pay, right? And that's a big deal because now I'm getting them to squirt oxytocin into their brain, and that's the bonding chemical, the loyalty chemical, the 5-star review chemical, the Indeed job posting Glassdoor thing where they're rating your business and saying, now these were pretty stand-up individuals, that. All the things that you're looking for to do the thing that you're trying to achieve here, which is to connect and bond and create long-term, profitable, successful, abundant relationships. It all starts from inside, and how you deliver that just has to be oriented in the same way that maintains a relational edge, a thriving edge, and not a surviving edge, right? Which is what the opposite does. So. Very interesting conversation, guys. There's a few interesting stats out there. According to LinkedIn, 75% of job seekers consider a company's brand before applying. 75%.
Yeah. Wow. What do I know about that? Yeah, they seem like good guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
simple as that.
I don't know them, right? Yeah. Do I really want to, if I don't know them,
Never heard of this company.
If I haven't, would my customers have heard of them?
Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard going over there.
Companies that showcase their value in their product advertising see up to a 20% increase in applicants, right? People want to work for Google. People want to
work for the people who make iPhones.
Well, and
iPhones are cool. And they must be cool.
And don't forget that the decision maker is more than just the person who's getting the job, right? They have families.
They do.
And so if you say to your wife, I'm thinking about taking the job over at Google, she's like, oh, you're going to get a job at Google. That's pretty freaking cool. If you say,
support you on that.
I'm thinking about taking a job over at Ryan's computer company, there she'd be like, you're doing pretty well at the place you're at now.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Recruitment ads with storytelling elements are 2.5 times more likely to attract top candidates than traditional job descriptions.
Stories work.
You can't
all advertising.
And don't talk about the job. No one cares about like if you're talking to an HVAC technician about an HVAC technician's job, what are you doing? Right?
Yeah,
the job description is
here's who we are, here's what we sell.
That's it, right? No one cares. You talk in your job ad about the type of person you want in that role that is congruent with the role, right? Fit happens at the leadership level, at the culture level, at the team level, right? And at the actual physical job level. They already know the job. The real question is, do they fit in the other 3 spots? That's 75% of the friggin' point, right? No different than your branding. Consider the brand 75%. That means 75% of them are discounting you as an option if they don't know your brand, right? So these are struggles of smaller companies, but it's never too early to start putting out an auditory message, a story, a narrative, a truth about what you stand for and what you stand against in this universe. From day one, it'll make a difference as to who you'll get to drive that intention forward, right? And grow your company. And Google gets over 2 million job applications per year, right? Despite rarely running direct recruitment ads.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that Roy did brilliantly with the Morris Jenkins campaign was he wrote an ad that you can find on YouTube about recruiting women in the trades, because there is a huge disparity in those roles, and that had massively successful results. Not only for the aesthetic of Morris Jenkins, who comes across and feels very, very compassionate towards families, let alone 50% of our population that is more than capable of performing extraordinarily high quality duties in the home with the training that they were able to provide.
Well, but also he leaned into that. Dewey Jenkins leaned into that. He didn't just simply say, we think there should be more women in the trades. He backed that up by putting a daycare in his building. So everybody who had children could just drop their children off at the daycare located at work.
Right.
And then you wonder why a bunch of women were like, that would make my life a lot easier. I could just go and work there.
Right.
And if something's wrong with my kid, I'm technically there.
Right.
You think that doesn't affect people's decision making?
It has a massive impact on decision making, and ultimately it's about being culture oriented in that nature, because your culture ultimately, when it boils down to it, is your brand. So we're really trying to create an environment where, it does make all that sense in the world for me to do the thing that we're asking him to do.
Let's define the terms. We've been saying company culture. We've said it a couple of times. But what is company culture? It is simply everything that is not salary and job description.
Right.
If your salary is the same as your competitors are paying, and your job description is the same as your competitors expect, then the only reason why you like this job better than that one is company culture.
Right.
It's
Right.
all that stuff.
And who drives company culture but the leaders who do it? Now, leaders don't control the culture controls the culture. There's a whole conversation just in culture alone.
This is a whole other episode.
It does get really fascinating as to what it is we can do to be the brand of choice. And it all ties back to, it's real hard to advertise that when you're not that. So one of the things to work on is to actually not be a crappy place.
Damn near
say
impossible to advertise. But
Right.
if you want to know if you've got a good one, well, if your employees are bringing their brother-in-law to come and work for it, you got something going on.
There's something there, yeah. Folks, we've seen what works and what doesn't, but how do you put this into practice? After this quick message, we'll wrap it up with actionable takeaways for crafting recruitment ads that actually deliver.
Remember that saying, only half your marketing is working, you just don't know which half? Let's help you with that. Book a free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today at wizardofads.services. Yes, that's a URL, wizardofads.services. Now let's get back to the show.
Bottom line, great recruitment ads don't feel like recruitment ads. They tell a story. They reflect your brand's values. They speak to the kind of person who will thrive in your culture. And when done well, they don't just bring you employees, they bring you the right employees. Remember, recruitment isn't about filling seats. It's about building a team that will grow your business. Now go write some ads that just don't suck. Until next time, you've been listening to Advertising in America.
Thank you for joining us on Advertising in America. We hope you enjoyed the show and captured a nugget of marketing magic. Want to hear more? Subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your friends. Do you have questions or topics you want us to cover? Join us on our socials at Advertising in America. Want to spend your marketing budget better? Visit us at wizardofads.services to book your free strategy session with Wizard Ryan Shute today. Until next time, keep your ads enchanting and your audience captivated.